Well guys, it's that time, the first fight of the greatest, the heavyweight edition. Why do I always say it like that? Of the greatest. I'm getting really sick of my own voice right now. But yes, I am in a new location. I've moved downstairs, I've got out of the bedroom, and I've got that nice little Hollywood sign, because that's the dream. We want to be breaking down fights in there. Good old Hollywood. Nonetheless, let's get on with this fight. A great clash of style, like every other fucking fight is by the looks of it. But a great clash of styles between Joe Frazier and Joe Louis. Marshall, just a quick overview on those two fighters.
Alright, in the red corner we have the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis, with a record of 66-3 and 52 knockouts. Notable victories over Max Schmeling, Max Baer, and James J. Braddock. And in the blue corner, Smoking Joe Frazier from Philadelphia with a record of 32-4-1, 27 knockouts. Notable victories over Muhammad Ali and Jerry Corey. So I was looking at the tail of the tape for this one. Joe Frazier comes in just under 6 foot, about 5'11 and a half, at 225 to 230 in between that. And then we have Joe Louis, who's about just under 6'2", 6'1 and a half, comes in about 205, between 200 and 205.
Yep. Okay. So, for me, this fight is intriguing because they gel very well. Like you just mentioned, the height difference is not much, but Joe Louis is the taller guy. The weight is the confusing one, because like I mentioned yesterday, I don't know how the old school smaller guys in terms of body weight would deal with the bigger, stockier guys. Obviously, Joe Frazier was another stack of heavyweights. He wasn't from the Joe Louis era, they were completely different. So he had evolved in terms of body shape. Like even now, you look at the fighters now, aren't like the fighters from the 80s. So it's interesting, but when you look at it carefully, Joe Frazier, especially after reviewing him after your video on the Combat Hour, go check it out. After reviewing him properly, you know, he was a great fighter in my opinion. He was a good pressure fighter, but there was just some things lacking about his punch output at times. He had certain ways of dealing with different fighters. He dealt with a Muhammad Ali that probably wasn't at his best after his his time off. And then you look at Joe Louis, and he was just ahead of his crop. So he could have fought fighters in his prime 10, 20, 30 years later. He would have put on a good competition. Look at the two big punches for Joe Louis. Is his jab. His jab was very good. And in my opinion, the left hook. I know you mentioned the right hand earlier, but the left hook was the one that put a lot of his opponents to sleep. They were dirty left hooks. He put his work together very well as well. He wasn't. He never overdid anything. He just put his combinations nicely, and they were lethal. So I feel like it would be a brutal fight, but over 15 rounds, if you want to say. I think that Joe Louis would get the victory.
Okay, first of all, I think we should outline that we're doing 12 rounds, right?
I was just saying 15 because obviously that's what they were doing before. But yeah, even 12 rounds is just 3 rounds less or whatever.
Okay, so Joe Louis has a 3-inch reach advantage, and he was technically one of the greatest of all time. His jab's amazing, his footwork is phenomenal. If you look at the opponents he's fought, he beat Max Baer, who at the time was one of the biggest heavyweight champions of all time. He's 6'3", 81-inch reach, just a massive man. And he was out jabbing, winning the battle of the jabs. Joe Frazier, yes, his style's gonna give anybody problems just because he has all heart and comes forward and looks to knock you out. But his Philly shell style defense, where he does all this, if you watch back the Ali fights, even the one he won, he ate so many jabs. Like it's there to be touched. Whenever he wants to touch you with a jab, Ali touched him with a jab. Ali had a better jab than Joe Louis, but Joe Louis has a great jab. So I think his jab's going to be a huge telling factor in this fight. The early rounds, Frazier's going to be all over him, like in his grill. But Joe doesn't like a dogfight. The short right hand that I was talking about, the left hook coming behind it, I see Joe Louis touching him more often, but Frazier touching with the harder shots early, and then Joe coming on late and stopping him.
Yeah, I can see something like that happening, but the stoppage I wasn't confident for, because I feel like Joe Frazier is too hard of a man to get stopped. He has to get stopped by like big shots. And don't get me wrong, Joe Louis used to stop people with I'm not contradicting myself, he used to stop people, but I don't think he had that type of power. You have to have that extra type of power, like the George Foreman, just fucking boom, walking straight through him. I don't think he'd walk straight through him because of, you know, they are similar in terms of, you know, height and power. I don't think it was exactly all the way George Foreman level, but he did definitely have power to bother him. That's what I think.
Pound for pound, in my opinion, Joe Louis is one of the hardest punchers of all time. Like, of course, he's not as hard at hitting as a 240-pound heavyweight, but pound for pound, he hits just as harder than all of them. Yeah. He had 52 knockouts on 66 wins, which works out to be just over 75% knockout ratio. Like, that's
and even ridiculous. When you faced Rocky Marciano, when he was, you know, later on in his career, he was old. You could see that his body wasn't. It actually reminded me of Mike Tyson fighting when he shouldn't have fought. You know, the later fights, the last 2 or 3 fights that he lost. It was like that. It was like Joe Louis was doing his old school stuff, but it just wasn't working out. So he, like I said, he had that great ability and skill level throughout. He was just naturally amazingly great, you could say, you know, and definitely for his era. So I think we both agree that Joe Louis advances to the next round.
For sure, but I really do think it's a knockout, man. If you look at who Frazier lost to and how he lost 4 times, he got knocked out 3 times. So one of those times was on the stool, his corner threw in the towel, but I can see something very similar happening where Louis is just hitting him with too many shots.
But which fight was it that his corner threw in the towel?
The third Ali fight.
Okay, yeah. So the 14th round, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was later on in his career. If we're talking about prime, I don't think he would get stopped. And to just counteract you, you said this is over 12 rounds. That stoppage was on the 14th round. I don't see him getting stopped in the 11th.
That's a good point. But to be honest, he was only 31 years old at that time.
Yeah. I just caught myself out of frame. But yeah, for sure.
But yeah, we both agree Joe Louis moves on and he wins fairly dominantly.
Yeah, for sure. Dominantly in terms of he doesn't embarrass Frazier, but Frazier will just take too much.
Yeah, I agree.
Alright, well that concludes the first fight. Nice and simple, good breakdown there. And make sure to stay tuned for the second fight, which is
Sonny Liston taking on the real deal Evander Holyfield. Talk about battle of the ages right there.
That is a brilliant fight. A lot of discussion for that one coming up. So guys, make sure to follow the page, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Hey Fight fans, it's Michelle Joy Phelps. If you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you go ahead and do so by clicking this icon right here and hit the bell button so you can get notified every time we upload a new video. And we also have a free app available on iTunes and Google Play. So make sure you go and download that. Bye Fight fans.